The transport ship descended through the purple clouds of New Pyongyang, carrying the most important visitors the colony had ever seen. 8-year-old Jiho Kim pressed his face against the window of the landing platform, watching the massive alien vessel touch down with barely a whisper. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Stand straight, Jiho," his father said quietly. Taesung Kim adjusted his diplomatic uniform one more time, his hand shaking slightly. "Today changes everything." Jiho did not understand what his father meant. He only knew that these aliens, the Velnar, were important, very important. For 3 months, people had been preparing for this visit. His mother had left the colony 2 weeks ago, sent away for reasons no one would explain to him. His father had not slept properly in days. The ship's door opened, and beings unlike anything Jiho had seen outside of videos began to emerge. They were tall, much taller than any human, with skin that seemed to glow softly in shades of blue and silver. Their faces were elegant and strange, with large eyes that caught the light like jewels. They moved with a grace that made them seem like they were floating rather than walking. At the center of the group walked their queen. Queen Nalira was magnificent. She wore armor made of some kind of living crystal that shifted colors as she moved. Her presence made everyone around her seem smaller, less important. Even his father, who usually stood so tall and confident, seemed to shrink a little. Behind the queen, carried in a floating cradle of light, was a small figure. A baby, the Velnar princess. Daesung stepped forward and bowed deeply. Jiho copied him, bending at the waist like his father had taught him. When they rose, the queen was looking directly at them. Her eyes were kind but also sad, as if she carried a great weight. "Ambassador Kim," the queen said in perfect Korean, her voice like music. "You requested this meeting. You said you had a proposal that could save both our peoples from war." War. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Jiho had heard whispers about it. The Velnar Empire controlled many star systems near human space. There had been incidents, misunderstandings, battles. Many people had died. Everyone feared what might come next. "I do, Your Majesty," Daesung replied. His voice was steady, but Jiho could see his father's jaw was tight. "A proposal that follows one of your oldest and most sacred traditions." The queen tilted her head slightly, curious. Around her, the other Velnar nobles shifted, their crystals chiming softly. Daesung placed his hand on Jiho's shoulder. The boy felt his father's fingers grip him tightly, too tightly. "I offer a marriage contract between my son, Jiho Kim, and your daughter, Princess Surin. A bond formed in childhood, to be fulfilled when they come of age. As your people have done for thousands of years to unite warring houses and create lasting peace." The silence that followed was complete. Even the wind seemed to stop. Jiho looked up at his father, confused. Marriage? He was only 8 years old. He barely understood what marriage meant. The Velnar nobles began speaking rapidly in their own language, their voices rising. Some sounded angry, others sounded shocked. Queen Nalira raised one hand and they all fell silent immediately. "You understand what you ask?" the queen said softly. "A childhood marriage bond is our most sacred tradition. Once sealed, it cannot be broken except by death. Your son would be bound to my daughter forever. He would have duties to the Velnar Empire, responsibilities that would shape his entire life." "I understand completely," Daesung said. "And I believe my son, though young, has the strength of character to honor such a bond. Humans value our promises just as your people do. This would prove that we can be trusted, that we can be family." Family. The word seemed to catch the queen's attention. She looked at Jiho for a long moment. He tried to stand straight and look brave, even though his heart was pounding. "A human has never been bound to Velnar royalty," one of the nobles said, stepping forward. He was massive, even for a Velnar, with dark crystals embedded in his armor. "It would be an insult to our bloodline. Our traditions are not meant for outsiders." "General Hyun," the queen said, her voice sharp. "I did not ask for your opinion." The general bowed but did not step back. Jiho could feel the anger coming from him, even though he did not fully understand it. Queen Nalira looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in the floating cradle. Then she looked back at Daesung and Jiho. For what felt like hours, she said nothing. Finally, she spoke. "If I accept this proposal, Ambassador Kim, your son will be educated in our ways. He will learn our language, our customs, our laws. When he comes of age, he will stand before the entire Velnar court and complete the trials of worthiness. If he fails, the contract is void, and war will likely follow. If he succeeds, he will become part of the royal family. He will have power but also tremendous responsibility. He will no longer belong only to humanity. He will belong to both peoples, Daesung said. A bridge between our worlds. The Queen nodded slowly. Very well. I accept your proposal, Ambassador Kim. Let it be known across both our civilizations that on this day, a sacred bond was formed. Jiho Kim of Earth and Princess Surin of the Velnar are promised to each other. The contract will be sealed in the traditional way. Before Jiho could ask what that meant, the Queen gestured. 2 attendants came forward carrying a crystal bowl filled with silver liquid. Another brought a small blade that glowed with strange energy. Your hand, child, the Queen said gently to Jiho. Jiho looked at his father, who nodded encouragingly. The boy extended his hand, trying not to shake. The Queen took it carefully. Her skin was cool and smooth, almost like glass. She pricked his finger with the blade. It stung, but only for a moment. A single drop of his blood fell into the silver liquid. Then the Queen did the same thing to her daughter. The baby's tiny finger was pricked and she cried out softly. A drop of her blood joined Jiho's in the bowl. The silver liquid began to glow, brighter and brighter. The 2 drops of blood swirled together, mixing, becoming one. The Queen poured the glowing liquid into a crystal pendant. She hung it around Jiho's neck. This is your bond, she said. It carries the blood of both families. You will wear it until the day you stand before me as a man and claim your place at my daughter's side. The pendant felt warm against Jiho's chest. He looked at the sleeping baby in the cradle and wondered what she would be like when she grew up. Would she be nice? Would she be mean? Would they be friends? The contract is sealed, Queen Nalira announced loudly. Let peace reign between humanity and the Velnar Empire. We are no longer strangers. We are family bound by sacred promise. The Velnar nobles bowed. Some looked pleased. Others, like General Hyun, looked anything but happy. As the Queen and her people returned to their ship, Daesung knelt down beside Jiho. His father's eyes were wet with tears. I'm sorry, son, he whispered. I know you don't understand now. Maybe you'll hate me for this someday, but I had no choice. This was the only way to save millions of lives, both human and Velnar. Jiho touched the warm pendant around his neck. He did not hate his father. He just felt confused and scared. His life had just changed forever, and he was only 8 years old. He watched the alien ship lift off into the purple sky, carrying the baby he would someday marry. That night, Jiho had strange dreams. He dreamed of tall cities made of crystal and light. He dreamed of stars he had never seen. He dreamed of a girl with glowing blue skin who reached out her hand to him. He did not know if the dreams were good or bad. He only knew that his childhood had ended on that landing platform. Years would pass before he would see Princess Surin again. Years of growing up under the shadow of a promise he never made himself, but the pendant around his neck would remain warm, a constant reminder that somewhere out in the vast universe, someone was waiting for him, and whether he wanted it or not, his destiny was already written in blood and starlight. 15 years had passed since that day on the landing platform, and Jiho Kim had become very good at running away. He stood in the cargo bay of the freighter ship Wanderer, checking the power coupling on the main engine. His hands moved with practiced skill, tightening bolts and adjusting settings. This ship was old and temperamental, but Jiho loved it. Out here in the frontier regions of space, far from Earth and even farther from the Velnar Empire, he could almost forget who he was supposed to be. Almost. Got another message from the Velnar court. Minho Park called from the doorway. He was Jiho's best friend and the Wanderer's pilot. They had met in engineering school and had been together ever since. Minho was the only person who truly understood what Jiho was running from. Delete it, Jiho said without looking up. Already did. But Jiho, they're getting more insistent. This is the 5th one this month. I don't care if it's the 100th. I'm not interested. Minho walked over and leaned against the engine housing. He was quiet for a moment, then said, You know you can't avoid this forever, right? You made a promise. I didn't make anything, Jiho snapped, his voice harder than he intended. My father made a promise. He traded my life away to prevent a war. I was 8 years old. I had no choice. And because of that promise, millions of people are still alive, human and Velnar both. Jiho put down his tools and finally looked at his friend. At 23, Jiho had grown into a lean, strong young man. His hands were scarred from years of working on ships. His eyes, once full of childish confusion, now carried a determined hardness. The pendant still hung around his neck, hidden under his shirt. He had tried to take it off once, years ago. It had burned his hands when he touched the chain. "I know what the promise meant," Jiho said quietly. "I know people are alive because of it. But that doesn't mean I have to be happy about spending my life married to someone I've never met. Living in an alien empire, following their rules, becoming something I'm not. Have you ever thought that maybe she doesn't want this either?" Minho asked. "Princess Surin didn't choose this any more than you did." Jiho had thought about that many times. But it was easier to be angry than to think about the fact that somewhere in the Velnar Empire, there was a young woman who was as trapped by this arrangement as he was. The ship's intercom crackled. "Jiho, Minho, get up here. We've got a problem." It was Yoonji Choi, the Wanderer's doctor and communications officer. They hurried to the bridge. Yoonji was staring at her console, her face pale. "I'm picking up a distress signal. It's a Velnar diplomatic ship. They're under attack." Jiho's stomach tightened. "Where?" "About 2 hours from our position. They're asking for help from any nearby vessels." "Not our problem," Jiho said immediately. "We're a cargo ship, not a military vessel." "They're dying, Jiho," Yoonji said, her voice sharp. She played the distress call. The sounds of weapon fire and screaming filled the bridge. A Velnar voice, desperate and frightened, called out in both their language and in Korean. "Please anyone, we are under attack by purist forces. They will kill us all. Please help." The message cut off abruptly. Minho looked at Jiho. "What do we do?" Jiho wanted to say no. He wanted to turn the ship around and fly in the opposite direction. Getting involved with Velnar politics was exactly what he had been avoiding for 15 years. But listening to that message, hearing the fear in that voice, he found he could not do it. His father had raised him better than that. "Set course," he said quietly. "Maximum speed." The next 2 hours were tense. They armed what few weapons the Wanderer had, which was not much. As they approached the location, they saw the wreckage. 3 ships hung dead in space. One was clearly Velnar, its crystal hull shattered and dark. The other 2 were marked with symbols Jiho recognized from intelligence reports. Purist forces. Velnar who believed their empire should remain pure, untouched by alien influence, especially human. "Life signs?" Jiho asked. Yoonji scanned carefully. "Faint readings on the diplomatic ship. Maybe 5 or 6 survivors. The purist ships are empty. Looks like they finished their attack and left. Or they're waiting," Minho muttered. They docked carefully with the damaged Velnar ship. Jiho, Minho, and Yoonji suited up and entered through an emergency airlock. The inside was a nightmare. Bodies floated in the zero gravity, Velnar nobles cut down by energy weapons. The beautiful crystal walls were scorched and cracked. They found the survivors in a sealed medical bay. When Jiho opened the door, several Velnar spun toward him, weapons raised. Then they saw his face and the pendant around his neck, which had somehow slipped out of his shirt during the work. The pendant was glowing brighter than Jiho had ever seen it. "The promised one of the Velnar whispered. She was an older female with deep blue skin and elaborate ceremonial robes. Despite the blood on her face, she carried herself with dignity. "Prince Jiho." "I'm not a prince," Jiho said. "I'm just someone who heard your distress call. Can you move? We need to get you off this ship before the purists come back." The Velnar woman, who introduced herself as Lady Bora, one of Queen Nalira's chief advisors, nodded. They carefully moved the 6 survivors to the Wanderer. 2 were badly injured. Yoonji worked on them immediately while Jiho piloted them away from the wreckage as fast as the old ship could manage. Once they were safely away, Lady Bora came to the bridge. She looked at Jiho for a long time, her large eyes seeming to see right through him. "You saved us," she said. "Even though you run from your destiny, you could not ignore our call for help. There is honor in you, Prince Jiho. Your father would be proud." "My father is dead," Jiho said flatly. "He died 3 years ago." Lady Bora's face showed genuine sadness. "I know, I was there. He died trying to negotiate peace between a purist faction and the Empire. They assassinated him during the talks." The words hit Jiho like a physical blow. He had known his father died in diplomatic service, but he had not known the details. The Velnar court had sent only a brief message, and Jiho had been too angry to ask for more information. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he whispered. "Because Queen Nalira feared you would do something foolish out of grief. She wanted to protect you." Lady Bora moved closer. "Prince Jiho, I must tell you something urgent." The queen is dying. She has been poisoned slowly over many months. We believe it was the purists. If she dies before Princess Surin can legitimately claim the throne through the marriage bond, civil war will tear the empire apart. What does that have to do with me? Everything. The marriage must happen soon. Within months, not years. Princess Surin cannot rule alone until the bond is complete. That is our law. If you do not come, if you do not honor the contract, the purists will seize power. And when they do, the first thing they will do is declare war on humanity. All the peace your father died for will be lost. Jiho felt trapped. The walls of the bridge seemed to close in around him. For 15 years he had run from this. He had built a life out here in the frontier, free and independent. And now it was all crashing down. The princess, he heard himself ask. What is she like? Lady Bora smiled slightly. She is brilliant, kind, and strong. She has spent her entire life preparing to be your wife and to bridge our two peoples. She speaks 7 Earth languages. She has studied human history and culture extensively. She writes poetry that would make you cry. And she is terrified that when you finally meet her, you will hate her for the burden placed upon you both. Jiho closed his eyes. Somewhere in the Velnar Empire was a woman who had spent her whole life preparing for him, while he had spent his life running away. The guilt hit him hard. I need time to think, he said. Time is something we no longer have, Lady Bora replied gently. That night, Jiho sat alone in his quarters holding the pendant. It was warm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. He thought about his father, who had sacrificed everything for peace. He thought about Princess Surin, who had lived her whole life under the same shadow he had. He thought about the millions of people, human and Velnar, whose lives depended on a promise made 15 years ago. He had been running for so long, but maybe it was time to stop. The next morning, Jiho walked onto the bridge where his crew waited. Minho and Unji looked at him with concern and support. Set course for the Velnar homeworld, Jiho said quietly. It's time I met my future wife. As the wanderer turned toward the heart of the Velnar Empire, Jiho felt the weight of destiny settle onto his shoulders. He was done running. Whatever came next, he would face it head on. For his father, for peace, and maybe, just maybe, for the woman he had been promised to so long ago. The Velnar homeworld appeared on the view screen like a jewel floating in space. The planet was covered in vast oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life, and the continents glowed with cities made of living crystal. Jiho had seen pictures before, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. It was beautiful beyond words. Incoming transmission, Yunji announced. It's from the Imperial Palace. They're sending an escort. 6 Velnar fighter ships appeared around the Wanderer, sleek and deadly. Their formation was precise and professional. A voice came through the comm system speaking in Korean. Freighter Wanderer, you are carrying Prince Jiho Kim, the promised one. We are honored to escort you to the capital. Please follow our lead and do not deviate from the flight path. They're calling you a prince, Minho said with a slight smile. How does that feel?
Strange, Jiho admitted.
And not entirely welcome. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jiho got his first real look at the Velnar capital city. It was enormous, stretching for hundreds of kilometers along the coast of a purple ocean. The buildings were not like human structures. They seemed to grow from the ground itself, spiraling towers of crystal that caught the sunlight and broke it into rainbows. Gardens floated in the air, connected by bridges of light. Ships moved through the sky in perfect harmony. It's incredible, Yunji breathed, like something from a dream. The escort led them to a private landing platform near the palace. As the Wanderer touched down, Jiho could see a gathering of Velnar nobles waiting. They wore elaborate robes and armor decorated with crystals. At the center stood Lady Bora, who had recovered from her injuries during the journey. Well, Jiho said, taking a deep breath. Here we go. He had changed into the formal clothes that Lady Bora had given him, a blend of human and Velnar styles. The pendant hung openly on his chest now, impossible to hide. It pulsed with light, seeming to respond to their proximity to the palace. As Jiho descended the ramp, the Velnar nobles bowed deeply. The gesture was respectful but also felt wrong. He was just a cargo ship engineer. He did not deserve this kind of reception. Prince Jiho, Lady Bora said, stepping forward. Welcome to the Velnar homeworld. The Queen awaits you in the throne room, if you will follow me. They walked through corridors that defied understanding. The walls were transparent crystal that showed glimpses of other rooms, other levels. Light flowed through channels in the floors and ceilings, creating patterns that changed as they passed. Everything was alive with subtle movement and color. Other Velnar stopped to stare as they passed. Some looked curious, others looked hostile. Jiho caught whispers in their language. He had learned some Velnar over the years, enough to understand phrases like human outsider and insult to tradition. Ignore them, Lady Bora said quietly. Change is always frightening to some. They reached massive doors carved with intricate scenes of Velnar history. The doors opened silently, revealing the throne room. Jiho's breath caught in his throat. The room was vast, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Columns of crystal rose from the floor, each one containing flowing light that moved like water. At the far end, on a throne made of what looked like solidified starlight, sat Queen Nalira. Jiho had seen her 15 years ago, vibrant and powerful. The woman on the throne was a shadow of that memory. Her skin had faded from bright blue to dull gray. The crystals in her crown looked dim, but her eyes, when they focused on Jiho, still held strength and intelligence. "Approach," the queen said, her voice weaker than before but still commanding. Jiho walked forward, aware of dozens of Velnar nobles watching him from the sides of the room. Lady Bora had instructed him on proper protocol, but his mind suddenly went blank. Should he bow, kneel? What were the words he was supposed to say? He stopped before the throne and did the only thing that felt right. He bowed from the waist deeply, showing respect. When he rose, the queen was smiling slightly. "Jiho Kim," she said, "you have grown into a fine young man. Your father would be proud." "Your Majesty," Jiho said, his voice tight with emotion. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I didn't know about my father. I didn't know you were sick. I was running away from my responsibilities. And yet, when you heard people in danger, you came to help. Even though they were Velnar. Even though you have every reason to resent us." The queen leaned forward slightly. "Do you know why I accepted your father's proposal 15 years ago? To prevent war? Partially. But also because I saw something in you that day. An 8-year-old boy who stood straight even though he was terrified. Who did not cry even when his finger was pricked. Who looked at my daughter with curiosity rather than fear." She paused, breathing heavily. "I saw potential. The potential to be a bridge between our peoples. Tell me, Jiho Kim, do you still carry that potential? Or have 15 years of resentment destroyed it?" Jiho thought carefully before answering. "I don't know, Your Majesty. I'm angry about the choice that was made for me. But I understand why it was necessary. And I'm here now because I believe peace is worth fighting for. Just like my father did." The queen nodded, satisfied. "Then there is hope. Before the marriage can proceed, you must complete the trials of worthiness. 3 tests that will prove you are capable of standing beside my daughter and sharing in the rule of the empire. These trials will test your mind, your heart, and your will. Many have failed them. Do you accept this challenge?" "I do," Jiho said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "Then I call forth Princess Siren, heir to the throne, to meet her promised husband." A door to the side of the throne room opened. Jiho's heart began to pound. He had imagined this moment countless times over the years. Sometimes with anger, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with fear. Now that it was happening, he felt all of those emotions at once. Princess Siren entered the throne room, and Jiho forgot how to breathe. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that shifted between shades of blue and silver like the surface of water. Her face was elegant and beautiful by both Velnar and human standards, with high cheekbones and large eyes that held intelligence and depth. She wore ceremonial armor that looked both ancient and advanced, decorated with crystals that caught the light. Her hair, if it could be called that, was actually fine strands of light that moved gently around her face. But it was her eyes that struck Jiho most. They were looking directly at him with an expression he recognized because he had worn it himself many times. Nervousness, fear, hope. She stopped a few feet away from him. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Then she spoke, her voice gentle and clear. "Jiho Kim," she said in perfect Korean. "I have waited 15 years to meet you. I am glad you have come." "Princess Siren," Jiho replied, struggling to find the right words. "I apologize for making you wait so long." A slight smile touched her lips. We were both children when this promise was made. Neither of us had a choice. But we are not children anymore. Now we can choose what we make of this bond. Before Jiho could respond, a harsh voice interrupted from the side of the room. This is an insult to our traditions. A massive Velnar stepped forward from the crowd of nobles. Jiho recognized him immediately from that day 15 years ago. General Hyun, larger and more intimidating than ever, his armor decorated with black crystals that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The human has no place in our royal family, Hyun continued, his voice dripping with contempt. He is weak, ignorant of our ways and unworthy of our princess. This arrangement should be broken. Let the empire remain pure. General Hyun, Queen Nellera said sharply, you forget your place. The contract is sacred and binding. Unless Prince Jiho fails the trials, it cannot be broken. Then let the trials begin immediately, Hyun said, turning his dark gaze on Jiho. Let us see how quickly this human fails. He may have some basic engineering skills, but he knows nothing of leadership, honor, or sacrifice. The trials will expose him for what he truly is. An outsider, a pretender. Jiho felt anger rise in his chest. He had dealt with prejudice before, both from humans who distrusted aliens and from aliens who saw humans as inferior. But something about Hyun's tone, the absolute certainty that Jiho would fail, sparked something in him. I accept the challenge, Jiho said loudly, turning to face Hyun. I will complete your trials, and when I do, you will accept that humans are not weak and we honor our promises. Hyun's face twisted into something that might have been a smile. We shall see, human. We shall see. Queen Nellera raised her hand and silence fell over the throne room. The trials will begin tomorrow at dawn. Prince Jiho will have tonight to rest and prepare. Lady Bora will see to his accommodations. She turned her gaze to Jiho, and for a moment her expression softened. Be strong, child of Earth. Much depends on your success. As Jiho was led from the throne room, he glanced back once. Princess Surin was watching him go, her expression unreadable. Their eyes met for just a moment, and Jiho felt the pendant against his chest grow warm. Whatever happened in the trials ahead, whatever came next, Jiho knew one thing for certain. His life had changed forever the moment he walked through those doors. There was no running away anymore. There was only moving forward into the unknown, toward a destiny written in blood and starlight 15 years ago. The time for running was over. The time for proving himself had begun. The guest quarters they gave Jiho were more luxurious than anywhere he had ever stayed. The room was carved from crystal that glowed softly with warm light. The bed adjusted to his body temperature, and windows looked out over the capital city as it sparkled in the evening. But Jiho could not appreciate any of it. His mind was too full of everything that had happened. He stood at the window, watching ships move through the sky like schools of fish, thinking about Princess Surin. She was nothing like he had imagined. In his mind, she had always been either a spoiled princess who would look down on him, or a cold politician who saw him as just a tool for power. But the woman he met today seemed different. Nervous, genuine, almost as trapped by the situation as he was. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Come in, he called. Princess Surin entered, and Jiho's heart jumped. She had changed from her ceremonial armor into simpler robes that still looked elegant. Without the formal setting of the throne room, she seemed less intimidating. Though she was still much taller than him, there was a softness to her expression that had not been there before. I hope I am not disturbing you, she said quietly. I wanted to speak with you privately before the trials begin. Of course. Please sit. Jiho gestured to the chairs by the window. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Surin's hands were folded in her lap, and Jiho noticed they were trembling slightly. She was nervous. The princess of an entire empire was nervous talking to him. I wanted to apologize, Surin said finally, for all of this, for the burden that was placed on you because of who I am. You don't need to apologize, Jiho said. You didn't choose this any more than I did. No, but I have benefited from it more than you have. While you were running away across the stars, I was here, preparing to be your wife, learning your languages, studying your culture, trying to understand what kind of person you might be. She looked at him with those large, expressive eyes. I have read every report about you. I know you became an engineer, that you are excellent with machines and problem solving, that you are loyal to your friends, that you love old Earth music, especially something called jazz. That you take your coffee black and hate mornings. Jiho felt exposed. You've been watching me? Not watching. Just trying to know you. Is that wrong? She looked down at her hands. I have spent 15 years preparing to share my life with you. I wanted to be ready. To be someone you could respect, maybe even care for eventually. But now that you are here, I realize I know facts about you, but I do not truly know you at all. Her honesty surprised him. Jiho had expected formality, political talk, maybe even coldness. Instead, she was being vulnerable with him. What do you want to know? He asked. Why did you run? Why did you avoid coming here for so long? Jiho thought about how to answer. He could be diplomatic, give her the easy response. But something about her openness made him want to be honest as well. Because I was angry, he said. My father made a choice for me without asking. I was 8 years old and suddenly my entire future was decided. I would marry someone I had never met. I would live in a place I had never seen. I would give up my freedom for politics and duty. He paused, and I was scared. Scared that if I came here I would lose myself, that I would stop being Jiho Kim and just become the human prince, the tool for peace, the outsider trying to fit into a world that would never fully accept him. Surin listened quietly, her expression sad but understanding. I have felt that same fear, she said softly. The fear of losing yourself to duty. I have spent my whole life being molded into the perfect bridge between our peoples. Sometimes I wonder if the real me even exists anymore, or if I am just a collection of lessons and expectations. They looked at each other, and Jiho felt something shift. They were not so different after all. Both trapped by duty, both struggling with the weight of expectations, both trying to figure out who they were beyond what others needed them to be. Tell me something true about yourself, Jiho said. Something that is not about duty or responsibility. Something that is just you. Surin smiled and it transformed her face. I write poetry. Terrible emotional poetry that I hide in encrypted files because if anyone in the court read it, they would think I was weak. I write about stars and loneliness and wondering what it would be like to choose my own path. That's not terrible, Jiho said. That's honest. I do something similar. I rebuild old machines that no one needs anymore, just because I like putting broken things back together. It makes me feel like I have control over something in my life. We are both trying to find small pieces of freedom wherever we can, Surin said. They talked for hours. Surin told him about growing up in the palace, the pressure of constant observation, the weight of knowing millions of people depended on her. Jiho told her about the frontier, the freedom of space, the adventures with his crew. They discovered they both loved music, though their tastes were completely different. They both valued loyalty above almost everything else. They both had complicated relationships with duty. As the city lights grew brighter in the darkness outside, Jiho realized he was actually enjoying himself. Talking to Surin felt natural, easy. She was intelligent and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that surprised him. When she laughed at one of his stories about a disaster on the Wanderer, the sound was like music. I should let you rest, Surin said eventually, standing. The trials begin at dawn and they will be difficult. The trial of mind first. The crystal labyrinth, what is it like? Jiho asked. It is different for everyone. The labyrinth reads your thoughts and fears, creating challenges specific to you. It is designed to test whether you can think clearly under pressure, solve complex problems, and face the truth about yourself. She hesitated. Jiho, I want you to succeed. Not just because of politics or peace, but because I would like to know you better. Is that selfish? No, Jiho said, standing as well. I want to succeed too, and not just for duty anymore. I think I would like to know you better as well. Surin's smile was gentle and genuine. She reached out as if to touch his hand, then stopped herself. The gesture was uncertain, showing how new and strange this was for both of them. Good luck tomorrow, she said. Be yourself, Jiho Kim, that will be enough. After she left, Jiho lay in the strange bed staring at the crystal ceiling. Everything had changed in just a few hours. Surin was not the enemy he had imagined. She was not even really a stranger anymore. She was a person, complicated and real, dealing with the same struggles he was. The pendant on his chest pulsed warmly, and for the first time in 15 years, it did not feel like a burden. It felt like a connection to someone who understood what he was going through, someone who might actually become a friend, maybe even something more. Tomorrow he would face the labyrinth. Tomorrow he would have to prove himself worthy. But tonight, for the first time since he was 8 years old, Jiho felt like maybe this destiny was not something to run from. Maybe it was something that could become his choice. As sleep finally came, Jiho dreamed. But this time the dreams were not frightening. He dreamed of crystal cities and distant stars, of poetry and old machines, and of a tall woman with glowing blue skin who reached out her hand to him. And in the dream, unlike all the times before, he reached back. Dawn came too quickly. Jiho was escorted by Lady Bora to the crystal labyrinth, which sat in the oldest part of the palace. The entrance was a massive archway carved with ancient symbols that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. A crowd had gathered to watch, nobles and common Velnar alike, all curious to see if the human would succeed or fail. General Hyon stood near the entrance with several other military officers, his expression dark and satisfied. He clearly expected Jiho to fail. That alone made Jiho determined to prove him wrong. Queen Nalira had been carried to a viewing platform on a floating throne. She looked weaker than yesterday, but her eyes were sharp as they focused on Jiho. "The trial of mind will test your ability to think clearly under pressure," she announced, her voice carrying across the crowd. "The labyrinth will show you things that are not real, challenge you with problems that seem impossible, and force you to face truths you may not want to see. Many who enter become lost in their own minds. You will have until sunset. If you do not emerge by then, you have failed." Jiho nodded, his throat dry. He looked around and found Surin in the crowd. She was watching him intently, and when their eyes met, she gave him a small nod of encouragement. "You may begin," the queen said. Jiho stepped through the archway, and the world changed. The labyrinth was not made of walls like he expected. Instead, he found himself standing in a vast space filled with floating platforms of crystal. Some were large, some small. Some glowed brightly, others were dim. Between them was nothing but darkness. There was no obvious path, no clear direction. "Think, Jiho," he muttered to himself. "There has to be logic to this." He studied the platforms carefully. After a moment, he noticed that the brighter ones pulsed in a pattern like code. He had worked with enough systems to recognize binary when he saw it. The pattern was giving directions. He jumped to the first bright platform, then followed the pattern. It led him deeper into the labyrinth, where the path became less clear. The platforms began to show images in their surface. His mother crying. His father disappointed. Memories of choices he regretted. "Not real," Jiho said firmly. "These are just projections." But then the labyrinth showed him something that made him stop. It was Princess Surin standing on a platform ahead. But this Surin looked angry, her face twisted with disgust. "You think I want this?" the projection said. "You think I want to marry a human who ran away from his responsibilities? You are weak, Jiho Kim. You will never be worthy of me or my people. You should have stayed away." The words hit hard because they echoed his own fears. What if Surin's kindness last night was just an act? What if she secretly resented him? What if he would never truly belong here? Jiho closed his eyes, fighting the doubt. Then he remembered Surin's real words. Her honesty. Her nervousness. The way she smiled when she talked about her poetry. That was real. This projection was just his fear speaking. "You are not her," Jiho said to the projection. "You are my own insecurity, and I will not let you stop me." He jumped past the projection and it dissolved into light. The labyrinth shifted, and now he stood in a recreation of the landing platform from 15 years ago. His 8-year-old self stood there looking up at him with confused, frightened eyes. "Why did you run?" the child asked. "Father needed us to be strong. We failed him." "No," Jiho said, kneeling to look at his younger self. "We did not fail. We were just a child dealing with something no child should have to face, and we survived. We grew strong in our own way. Father would understand." The child version of himself smiled and faded away. The labyrinth shifted again, this time showing him a series of mechanical puzzles, complex engineering problems that needed solving to open the next path. This was easier. This was what Jiho was good at. He worked through them methodically, using his knowledge and creativity. Finally, he reached what felt like the center of the labyrinth. There, floating in the darkness, was a perfect crystal sphere. Inside it, he saw something that made his breath catch. It was a vision of the future. But which future, he could not tell. One vision showed him standing beside Surin, both of them older, ruling together. The Empire was at peace. Human and Belnar children played together in the streets. His crew, Minho and Yunji, served as advisors. It was a good future, built on hard work and sacrifice. Another vision showed the Empire in flames. War between humans and Velnar, millions dead. Surin standing alone on a throne, grief-stricken. This was the future if he failed, if the purists won, if the marriage did not happen. Choose. A voice whispered through the labyrinth. Choose your path. But Jiho understood now. This was not about choosing between two preset futures. This was about choosing to move forward, to accept responsibility, to be part of shaping whatever came next. The future was not written yet. It was being created by every choice he made. I choose to try, Jiho said to the crystal sphere. I choose to honor the promise not because I have to, but because I want to. Because peace is worth fighting for. Because Surin deserves someone who will stand beside her, not run away. Because this is who I am now. The sphere shattered into 1,000 points of light, and suddenly Jiho was standing at the exit of the labyrinth. The sun was still high in the sky. He had made it through in only a few hours. The crowd erupted in surprise. Lady Bora was smiling. Queen Nalira looked proud. General Hyun looked furious. And Surin, her face filled with relief and something else, something warm, was watching him with those beautiful, expressive eyes. The trial of mind is complete, the Queen announced. Prince Jiho has proven he can think clearly, face his fears, and find truth within himself. Tomorrow, the trial of heart. That night, Surin came to his quarters again. She looked different somehow, more relaxed. You did well today, she said. The labyrinth is cruel. It shows you your worst fears and deepest doubts. What did you see? I saw my father, my younger self. You, or rather a version of you that was just my own fear talking. Jiho paused. And I saw possible futures, both good and bad. And which future do you want? The one where we figure this out together, Jiho said honestly. Surin reached out, and this time she did touch his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, strange but not unpleasant. I want that too, she said softly. The next morning brought the trial of heart. This time they were taken to a settlement on the outskirts of the capital. Lady Bora explained the challenge. You must prove you can put others before yourself, she said. The trial has been prepared. You will know what to do when the moment comes. But as Jiho walked through the settlement observing daily life, alarms suddenly began blaring. People started screaming and running. Something was wrong with the power core that provided energy to the entire settlement. It was overloading. If it exploded, thousands would die. Jiho ran toward the core facility. Engineers were frantically trying to shut it down, but the controls were not responding. He looked at the readouts and immediately understood the problem. This was sabotage. Someone had corrupted the control systems. Can you fix it? One of the Velnar engineers asked desperately. Jiho did not hesitate. Get everyone away from this building. Evacuate a kilometer radius. I will need complete access to the core. As people fled, Jiho dove into the systems. The sabotage was sophisticated, but he had dealt with emergency shutdowns before on the Wanderer. He began rerouting power, bypassing corrupted controls, manually directing energy flows. It was dangerous work. One mistake and the core would explode with him inside. He heard footsteps behind him. Surin had entered the facility carrying tools. What are you doing here? Jiho shouted over the alarms. You need to evacuate. You need help, she said calmly. Tell me what to do. They worked together, Jiho calling out instructions, Surin following them precisely. Her hands were steady even as the core began to shake and glow dangerously bright. In that moment, Jiho saw her not as a princess but as a partner, someone who would face danger beside him rather than hiding in safety. With seconds to spare, they managed to stabilize the core. The alarm stopped. The danger passed. They stood there, both breathing hard, covered in coolant and sweat, looking at each other. That was the trial of heart, Surin said with a slight smile. You were supposed to choose between completing the trial or saving lives. You chose to save lives without hesitation. Wait, this was the trial? Someone sabotaged a power core and put thousands of people in danger for a test? No. The trial was a simulation that was supposed to start an hour from now. Someone really did sabotage the core, probably the same purist who attacked the diplomatic ship. She looked at him with something like wonder. You saved them, Jiho, all of them, and you did not even know it was your trial. That evening, Queen Nalira declared the trial of heart passed. Jiho had proven he would sacrifice himself for others. He was worthy in compassion and courage. But General Hyan stood before the court and announced a formal challenge. One trial remains. The trial of will, and this one the human will fail. He will be asked to renounce his humanity, to declare the Velnar Empire his only loyalty. He will refuse, as all humans do. And when he does, the contract will be broken, and this insult to our traditions will end. The final trial would happen at dawn, and Jiho knew that Hyun was right. They would ask him to give up who he was. The question was, could he find a way to be true to himself and still pass the trial? The final trial was set to take place in the Grand Hall, where the entire Velnar court would witness. Jiho stood before hundreds of nobles, their eyes judging him, measuring him, many of them hoping he would fail. General Hyan stood at the front with a smile that promised trouble. Queen Nalira sat on her throne, looking frailer than ever. Beside her, Surin wore her formal armor and crown, every inch the royal princess. But when she glanced at Jiho, he saw worry in her eyes. The trial of will, Queen Nalira began, her voice weak but clear, requires the candidate to demonstrate absolute commitment to the Velnar Empire. Prince Jiho Kim, you will now renounce all previous loyalties. You will declare that the Velnar Empire is your only allegiance, your only family, your only home. You will pledge that in any conflict between Velnar and humanity, you will always choose Velnar. Do you understand? Jiho felt every eye in the room on him. This was the trap. If he agreed, he would be betraying everything he was, every human who depended on this alliance being between equals, not master and servant. If he refused, the contract would be broken and war would likely follow. He looked at Surin, who was watching him intensely. Then he looked at General Hyun, who was barely hiding his satisfaction. Finally, Jiho looked back at the queen and made his choice. No, he said clearly. I will not renounce my humanity. Gasps rippled through the hall. Hyun's smile grew wider. But Jiho was not finished. Your Majesty, I understand this trial is ancient and sacred, but I believe it is also wrong. Not because I do not respect Velnar tradition, but because true unity cannot be built on erasure. You asked me to deny who I am, where I come from, the people who shaped me. If I did that, I would be a liar and a coward. And a liar and coward is not worthy to stand beside Princess Surin. He turned to address the entire court now, his voice growing stronger. I am human. I was born on Earth, raised in a colony world, shaped by human values and human struggles. That is part of me, and I will not pretend it is not. But I am also bound by sacred promise to this empire and to Princess Surin. I will honor that bond. I will serve this empire. I will give my life to protect its people. But I will do so as myself, as Jiho Kim, both human and Velnar through marriage. Not one or the other. Both. This is blasphemy, Hyun shouted. He refuses the trial. He spits on our traditions. He speaks truth. Surin's voice rang out, surprising everyone. She stood from her seat beside her mother. General Hyun, you designed this trial to make him fail. You want the marriage to be broken so you can push for war. But Prince Jiho is right. Strength comes from unity, not erasure. My mother agreed to this bond precisely because she wanted a bridge between our peoples, not a human who would simply become Velnar. Princess, you overstep, Hyun growled. The trial is sacred. The law is clear. Queen Nalira raised her hand weakly. Peace, General. My daughter speaks wisdom. She looked at Jiho with something like approval. Prince Jiho has shown more courage in his refusal than most show in obedience. He will not compromise his integrity even when threatened with failure. That is will. That is strength. The trial of will is passed. The court erupted in chaos. Some nobles cheered. Others protested. Hyun's face went dark with rage. He started to shout something, but his words were drowned out by a massive explosion that shook the entire palace. Alarms blared. The crystal walls cracked. People screamed and ran. Jiho instinctively moved toward Surin as guards surrounded the queen. What is happening? Surin demanded. Lady Bora ran into the hall, her face pale. The palace is under attack. Purist forces have breached the outer defenses. They are fighting their way to the throne room. Hyun, Surin said, spinning to face the general. But he was already moving, pulling a weapon from beneath his robes. He fired at the queen's guards, cutting them down with precision. Finally, Hyun said, his voice cold, no more pretending. No more waiting. The empire will be cleansed today. The human will die. The queen will die. And I will take the throne as I should have years ago. More soldiers burst into the hall, but these were wearing Hyon's colors. The purist uprising had begun in earnest. Loyal guards tried to fight back but were overwhelmed. Nobles fled in all directions. The hall became a battlefield. Jiho grabbed Surin's arm. "We have to get your mother out of here!" But Hyon was already moving toward the queen, his weapon raised. Surin ran forward, putting herself between her mother and the general. She was unarmed, wearing only ceremonial armor. Hyon would cut her down without hesitation. Jiho did not think. He simply moved. He crashed into Surin, pushing her aside as Hyon's blast scorched the air where she had been standing. The blast hit Jiho's shoulder instead, burning through his formal clothes and searing his skin. The pain was incredible, but he stayed on his feet. "Run," he shouted to Surin. "Get your mother to safety." "I will not leave you," Surin shouted back. More loyal guards arrived, led by Lady Bora. They formed a protective circle around the queen and began fighting their way toward the exits. Jiho and Surin were separated from them by waves of purist soldiers. "This way." Jiho pulled Surin down a side corridor. His injured shoulder screamed in protest, but he kept moving. Behind them, Hyon was shouting orders to his soldiers to find them. They ran through the crystal halls of the palace, which were now filled with smoke and battle. Jiho's mind raced. He was not a soldier. He was an engineer, but he knew buildings, systems, weaknesses. There had to be a way to fight back. "The communication center," he said. "If we can reach it, we can call for help. Contact the human fleet, the loyal Velnar forces." "It is 3 levels down," Surin said, "but it will be heavily guarded by purists. Then we need weapons and a plan." They found both in an armory that had been abandoned during the chaos. Surin grabbed a weapon with practiced ease, and Jiho realized she was far more than just a princess. She had been trained for combat. She moved like a warrior. "You know how to fight," he said, slightly surprised. "I am heir to an empire," she replied with a grim smile. "Of course I know how to fight." "Do you?" "Not really, but I'm very good at improvising." They made their way toward the communication center, fighting when they had to, hiding when they could. Surin was elegant and deadly, her movements precise. Jiho used his knowledge of the palace systems to create distractions, overloading power conduits to create sparks and smoke, sealing doors behind them to slow pursuers. They worked together perfectly, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. When Jiho's injured shoulder made him slow, Surin covered him. When Surin was surrounded, Jiho found creative ways to even the odds. Finally, they reached the communication center, but Hyon was already there, waiting with a dozen soldiers. He had anticipated their move. "How predictable," Hyon said. "The human shows his true nature, running, hiding, calling for help instead of facing me directly." "Tactical thinking is not cowardice," Jiho shot back. "It is intelligence. Something you clearly lack." Hyon's face twisted with rage. "I will enjoy killing you, human. And then I will take the throne, and I will lead our empire to crush your pathetic species." "You will do nothing," Surin said, stepping forward. Her voice had changed, becoming deeper, more commanding. She stood taller, and the crystals in her armor began to glow with an inner light. "I am Princess Surin, daughter of Queen Nalira, heir to the crystal throne, and I invoke the ancient right of royal command." She spoke words in the old Velnar language, words of power that made the air itself vibrate. Hyon stumbled back, his face showing shock for the first time. "No," he whispered. "That power is supposed to be dormant until you complete the marriage bond." "The bond began 15 years ago with blood and sacred promise," Surin said, her voice echoing with power. "It has been strengthened through trials and choice and genuine connection. The marriage ceremony is just formality. The bond is already real." The crystals in Hyon's armor began to crack and shatter. He fell to his knees, the royal command stripping him of his military authority, his augmented strength, everything that made him dangerous. His soldiers, seeing their leader defeated, began to surrender. But Hyon, in a last desperate act, grabbed a fallen weapon and aimed it at Surin. "If I cannot have the empire, no one will." Jiho saw what was happening in slow motion. Without thinking, he threw himself in front of Surin again. The blast hit him in the chest right where the pendant hung. The impact threw him backward and everything went dark. He woke up to Surin's face above his, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jiho, stay with me. Please." His chest hurt, but the pain was fading. He looked down and saw the pendant had taken most of the blast. Its crystal surface cracked but still glowing. It had saved his life. "I am okay," he managed to say. Is Hyun? Dead, Surin said flatly. The guards killed him before he could fire again. The uprising is being suppressed. Loyal forces are retaking the palace. She helped him sit up gently. You saved me. Again. You nearly died for me. That is what partners do, Jiho said with a weak smile. We protect each other. Surin laughed and cried at the same time. Then she did something neither of them expected. She kissed him. It was clumsy and awkward because their faces were shaped differently, but it was also genuine and full of emotion. When she pulled back, she looked embarrassed. I apologize. That was inept. 6 months had passed since the day Queen Nalira died and General Hyon's uprising was crushed. 6 months of rebuilding, healing, and preparing for what came next. The palace had been repaired, its crystal walls restored to their former glory. But everyone who lived there knew that things had changed forever. Jiho stood in his chambers looking at himself in the mirror. He wore formal clothes that blended human and Velnar styles, elegant robes in deep blue decorated with small crystals that caught the light. Around his neck the pendant still hung, its surface still cracked from the blast that nearly killed him. He had refused to have it repaired. The cracks reminded him of everything they had been through, everything they had survived together. Today was the wedding day. After everything, after all the trials and battles and grief, it was finally happening. You look nervous, Minho said from the doorway. He and Yoonji had stayed on the Velnar homeworld as Jiho's advisors, representatives of humanity in the new administration. Second thoughts? No second thoughts, Jiho said honestly. Just overwhelming thoughts. In a few hours I will be married to the Queen of the Velnar Empire. Me, a cargo ship engineer from New Pyongyang. You are a lot more than that now, Yoonji said, entering behind Minho. You are a hero, a diplomat, a leader, the man who helped save the empire from civil war. I just did what needed to be done. That is exactly why you are perfect for this role, Minho said with a smile. You never sought power. You just wanted to do the right thing. That makes you better than most rulers. A knock at the door interrupted them. Lady Bora entered, her expression warm. Over the past months, she had become one of Jiho's closest advisors and friends. She understood both Velnar and human perspectives and helped bridge the gap between them. It is time, she said. The ceremony will begin soon. The entire empire is watching. Jiho took a deep breath and followed her through the palace corridors. They were lined with people, both Velnar and human, who had come to witness this historic moment. He saw faces full of hope, curiosity, and in some cases lingering doubt. But mostly he saw people ready for change, ready for a new era. The ceremony would take place in the Grand Hall, which had been transformed. Instead of purely Velnar decorations, it now featured elements from both cultures. Human flowers alongside Velnar crystal formations, earth music playing alongside Velnar harmonics. It was a fusion, a symbol of what was to come. As Jiho entered the hall, he saw the assembled crowd. Hundreds of Velnar nobles, human ambassadors, representatives from colonies and allied worlds. At the center, standing before an altar that combined both human and Velnar religious symbols, stood Surin. She looked breathtaking. Her armor had been replaced with ceremonial robes that seemed to be made of liquid light, flowing and shifting with every movement. Her crown was a masterpiece of crystal and precious metals from both worlds, but it was her face that captured Jiho's attention, her eyes that held his as he walked down the aisle toward her. They had grown close over these 6 months. What had started as duty and mutual respect had deepened into genuine affection. They spent hours together each day, working on rebuilding the empire, making plans for the future, and simply talking. Jiho had learned that Surin had a terrible sense of humor, that she loved old human mystery novels, and that she sang quietly to herself when she thought no one was listening. She had learned that Jiho was surprisingly good at cooking, that he had nightmares about the uprising, and that he still missed the freedom of flying through space on the Wanderer. They had both learned that they were stronger together than apart. As Jiho reached the altar and took his place beside Surin, she smiled at him. Not the formal princess smile she wore for the public, but the real smile she saved for him, the one that made her eyes light up and her whole face soften. The ceremony was conducted by both a Velnar high priest and a human minister, representing the union of two peoples. They spoke in both languages, their words echoing through the hall. We gathered today to witness a bond that began 15 years ago with a promise made in desperation and hope, the high priest said. A promise that has been tested by time, trial, and tragedy. But what began as obligation has become something greater, a genuine partnership, a true union, the human minister continued. Marriage is not just about duty or politics. It is about two people choosing to face life together, to support each other, to grow together. Today, Jiho Kim and Princess Surin make that choice. Not because they must, but because they want to. Surin and Jiho had written their own vows, something that had shocked the traditionalist Velnar nobles but had been accepted because Surin was now the ruling queen. She could make her own rules. Surin spoke first, her voice clear and strong. Jiho Kim, 15 years ago you were promised to me by your father. You did not choose this bond. For years you ran from it and I do not blame you. But when the time came, you chose to honor that promise. You came to me. You stood beside me. You saved my life more than once. You became my partner, my friend, and my love. Today I choose you again, freely and gladly. I promise to stand beside you, to value your perspective, to honor both your human heritage and your place in the Velnar Empire. I promise to face the future with you, whatever it may bring. Jiho felt emotion welling up in his chest. When it was his turn to speak, his voice was rougher than he would have liked. Princess Surin, when I first learned about our arrangement, I was angry. I felt trapped. I did not understand that you were just as trapped as I was. But over these past months, I have come to know you. Not as a political arrangement, but as a person. You are brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than anyone I have ever met. You carry the weight of an empire with grace. You inspire people to be better. And somehow, despite everything, you have made me want to be better too. Today I choose you. Not because of a promise made by our parents, but because of who you are. I promise to stand beside you always, to support your rule, to help build the future we both dream of. I promise to love you not as a duty, but as a choice I make every single day. There was not a dry eye in the hall, Velnar and human alike. Even Lady Bora was wiping tears from her face. The ceremonies continued with the exchange of symbolic items. Surin gave Jiho a ring made of Velnar crystal that would mark him as part of the royal family. Jiho gave Surin a simple bracelet he had made himself from materials from Earth, a reminder of where he came from and what he brought to their union. Finally, the high priest and minister spoke together. By the power vested in us by both Velnar tradition and human custom, we declare this bond complete. Surin, queen of the Velnar Empire, and Jiho Kim, prince consort and king by marriage. Let it be known across all worlds that two peoples are now one family. The hall erupted in cheers. Music played, a beautiful blend of human and Velnar styles. Jiho and Surin turned to face the crowd as husband and wife, as queen and king, as partners in leading an empire into a new era. The celebration that followed lasted hours. Food from both cultures was served. People danced to music that mixed human and Velnar instruments. For the first time in memory, humans and Velnar celebrated together as true equals, as family. But eventually, as the celebration continued, Jiho and Surin slipped away for a moment of privacy. They found themselves on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The sun was setting, painting the crystal buildings in shades of gold and purple. In the streets below, they could see the changes that had already begun. Human districts had been established, mixed neighborhoods where Velnar and human families lived side by side. Schools where children of both species learned together. Look at what we have started, Surin said softly, leaning against the balcony rail. 6 months ago, I was not sure we would survive. Now look at them. Our people together. Our people, Jiho repeated, liking the sound of that. It is not perfect yet. There is still distrust, still prejudice. It will take time, but we have time now. And we have each other. Surin turned to look at him. Are you happy, Jiho, truly? He thought about the question. 6 months ago, he would have said no. A year ago, he would have laughed at the idea of being happy in this role. But now, standing beside this remarkable woman, looking out at a city that represented hope and possibility, he found his answer. Yes, he said. I am happy. Not because of the title or the power, but because I found something I did not expect. I found a partner. I found purpose. I found home. Surin smiled and took his hand. They stood there together, watching the sun set on the first day of their married life and the beginning of a new era for the empire. Behind them, the celebration continued. Minho and Yunji were teaching Velnar nobles how to dance human style. Lady Bora was laughing at something one of the human ambassadors said. Children of both species were running through the halls, playing games together without caring about the differences in their skin or eyes or cultures. This was the future Queen Nalira had dreamed of. The future Jiho's father had sacrificed everything to make possible. And now it was real, fragile, and imperfect, but real nonetheless. I wish my father could see this, Jiho said quietly. I wish your mother could see what their sacrifice created. I think they do see it, Surin replied. Somehow I think they know, and I think they are proud.